All right, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Smith, and in this video is a little bit of a light rant about supposed master and grandmaster level instructors teaching nonsense when they're otherwise reputable teachers, but teaching in certain areas nonsense. I just got done watching, which I turned it off halfway through it when I saw how wrong what it was teaching is watching a video about Sanchin kata, which is common in the Okinawan styles of karate, is usually the first kata taught, but the last one fully tested because it's supposedly the hardest to master. The breathing techniques and the muscle tension and relaxation techniques that the kata is supposed to be teaching. In reality, you can do muscle tension and breathing and relaxing techniques with any kata or just no kata at all. You don't need the kata. The kata is nothing special about it. In fact, it's probably the most useless kata in the world in terms of fighting because it has almost no real fighting technique in it. I always complain about the fact that, especially the version of Sanchin that's taught in Ishinryu karate, uh, it only has 6 steps, 3 steps forward, 3 steps backward, and it's incredibly redundant. And I've absolutely never used any of the techniques in the kata in a real fight or sparring match. But what was the problem with Sanchin? First of all, my first Ishinryu karate chief instructor when I was 12 years old had a habit of teaching some bad principles from Sanchin kata that either are not physically possible or else only one in about 10 million or 100 million or 1 billion people in the world can actually do this. And supposedly the spearhand, the double spearhand in Sanchin kata, you're supposedly penetrating, pushing in so hard on a person's flesh under their floater ribs that you can allegedly grip their floater ribs and break their floater ribs. I've never seen an athlete awesome enough to do that. The only one that might be able to do it is a certain grandmaster in Okinawa who can put his fingertips through 7 ponderosa pine planks. He might be able to do that in the real world, and he's getting too old to do it, by the way. But in terms of what a normal or even professional fighter who trains 15, 20, 30 hours a week cannot do that. So why it's even mentioned as bunkai to kids or young adults or adults, I don't know, because you're not going to do that in a real fight. It's just not going to happen. Well, just yesterday and today, I was rewatching some Sanchin kata teaching by another grandmaster, and he was saying that at a certain point in the kata that he wants you to tense, your buttocks and your anus muscles. And I'm like, what on earth does this have to do with fighting and self-defense? Absolutely zero, unless you're in cell block D at the prison down there and worried about some guy trying to butt screw you while you're getting your soap. It has zero to do with self-defense or fighting. I have close to 2,000 hours of full contact sparring by the time I was 20 years old. All right, younger in life. I'm 45 now. But by the time I was 20 years old, I had 2,000 hours of full contact sparring against other brown and black belt fighters. And I never once needed to tense my butt muscles or anus to keep somebody from sticking a pencil up my ass. So what the hell did that have to do with real fighting? I don't know. And why I mentioned that in a video, and you're supposedly a 10th degree black belt, that is nonsense. It has nothing whatsoever to do with physical fitness or fighting. And I just about want to call his name, but I'm not. But it's absurd what some people who might otherwise be reputable teachers do in the name of traditional martial arts. And now I start to see why some people frown on traditional martial arts so much, because there's so much stupid mysticism and other forms of stupidity around it that don't work in real fights. What on earth does that have to do with real fighting? I don't know. I used to be my sensei's best sparring student for 4.5 consecutive years. And his second best, I was one of his worst kata students. I absolutely sucked at learning and memorizing kata, but I learned how to fight for real, which is what matters. But his second best sparring student was also probably his best kata student, which is Matt Greek. I'll give you his name because I'm telling you something good about this guy. But he could hit you in any muscle group in your arm or leg and deaden your arm or leg. By the way, that's real pressure points. Usually the nerves tend to be in the center of muscles, and if you hit somebody in the center of muscle groups, it deadens your arm or your leg. So it took a long time before I learned how to beat him or at least match him in sparring. And he caught me one good time on the chin one time that buckled both of my legs, and I quickly had to wave him off or I would have been horribly defeated because he was a heavyweight and I was at the time a middleweight, not even a light heavyweight. Whenever I'm in perfect shape, I'm supposed to be about 185. Whereas he was in pretty damn good shape at 235, slightly more than the low end of heavyweight. And so in 2,000 hours of sparring against other brown belts and black belts, I never once had a situation where I'm like, oh my God, I really want to tense my anus muscles to keep him from hitting me in the ass or whatever. I don't know where that came from. It's like it came out of this grandmaster's mouth for no apparent reason other than he thought he was saying something perverse. Maybe he thought he was making a joke, or maybe he thought we were dumb enough to believe it. But I immediately stopped watching the video about a minute later because he never explained what that supposedly is. It's just interjected into the teaching like that's supposed to be some kind of good skill that you need to know for self-defense or martial arts. It has nothing to do with anything. So I see where they come from, some of the modern martial artists and mixed martial artists that don't subscribe to TMA, traditional martial arts. I see what their problem is, that yes, there is this certain level of stupidity in traditional martial arts where these instructors have nonsense explanations for why they're doing things or how they're doing things that flat out do not help in the real world. And online, Jesse Enkamp and Sensei Seth, they're both 4th or probably 5th degree black belts in Shotokan by now. And they're about half my age. They're both about a little over half my age. And both of them have said that they would prefer that you not even learn kata if you at least learn the techniques rather than the kata. Now, they both know all their Shotokan katas or they wouldn't have ranked up. And unfortunately, there's 26 Shotokan katas altogether. It's absurd. But they said they'd rather you not even bother with kata if you learn the technique. They said just teach the technique and learn the technique and forget the kata. And I'm at that place in my life where I don't have time to memorize kata all the time or anything like that or rememorize kata. But I do still know the techniques. In particular, since I've had 4 mini strokes or TIAs, it's kind of pointless for me to try to train kata robotically like you used to. And it's also not physically possible for me to train full time like I did whenever I was last 185 pounds. It's not physically possible because I've lost about 50% of the feel of both the feeling and the grip strength and the pushing and pull strength in my left arm since having the TIAs. All right. So if your instructor starts teaching you something that makes no sense whatsoever, call him out. Either he's a fool and doesn't know what he's talking about, or you're about to be taught something deep and spiritual. Put it that way. If it sounds like he does not know what he's talking about, call him out and see if he in fact does not know what he's talking about. Because some of these people that are otherwise in good reputation, sometimes they get off of their area of expertise and they do not know what they're talking about when it happens. One of my other grandmaster senseis, and I'm not picking on a man and I'm not going to call his name, but he's supposedly a 10th degree expert in eskrima stick fighting and also a 10th degree black belt in Ishinryu karate. And I saw him online teaching a seminar where what he was teaching was completely false. He was teaching about about eskrima sticks and why the thrust is more effective. The thrust is more effective with a stick, but the truth is with a bladed weapon, it doesn't matter whether you use a slash, a bludgeoning strike, or a thrust. Yeah, because it's going to kill your opponent in 1 or 2 hits anyway with a Roman gladius. And he got off his area of expertise and started talking about the Roman gladius and how it was used in warfare. And I said, this ought to be obvious to anybody, but I know from Forged in Fire, when they test short swords and samurai swords that they forge on the set, and they're not even the best forgers at it. That's the contestants. When they test their weapon, they can cut clean through a frozen hog carcass in one swing. Doug Marcaida, however you say his last name, he can take the contestant's homemade sword and cut clean through a frozen pig carcass in one swing. So don't tell me that the bludgeoning swing or the slashing swing with a Roman gladius wouldn't cut another person clean in half, but he was trying to claim that a thrust with a sword is 70% likely to hit a vital target, whereas according to him, a slash was only a couple percent likely to hit a vital target. BS. A slash or a bludgeoning strike with a Roman gladius would cut the opponent clean in half, and they would be dead before their carcass hit the ground. And he's supposedly a 10th degree black belt in eskrima stick fighting, and he did not know basic sword mechanics. And he was running his mouth using an hour-long seminar, and almost nothing that he was talking about made a single bit of sense. I'm highly disappointed in that. If you don't know what you're talking about, shut the hell up and let somebody else talk. And he's featured in Black Belt Magazine